What's going on, everybody? This is James Grandmaster Facts Boys. You're here for another episode of the Facts Project. Today, we get to talk about Reign of Dracula with Rich Davis. Thank you for being here, sir.
Man, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, man. Look, for one, I am very intrigued by what I've been able to read so far as your book and what you're putting out there to Kickstarter. So first question, as far as the reasonings of basically jumping into a very, very branchy type of creative IP as Dracula and vampires, what makes your story pretty much stick out amongst the rest?
So I provide a completely unique and unexpected take on Dracula. In this world, to start with, Dracula is not one person. Dracula is a title, like queen or princess or empress. And it's passed down from generation to generation, culture to culture, through this bloodline that traces its lineage all the way back to Lilith in the Garden of Eden. So if you've picked up on a couple of things I've said there, you're probably seeing the next way that my Dracula is different. My Dracula is a woman. First question I'm always asked is why? My response is usually because I wanted to, man.
Yeah.
No, but no, there actually really is a reason behind it. What I knew when I started out way back in 2021, 2019 really was when I was writing it, Cult of Dracula, the first volume of this series. What I knew was that I did not want to create another story about a pasty white dude from Eastern Europe invading Victorian London, buying up all the real estate. Right. That's a great story. It's been done thousands of times.
Right.
People don't need my take on that story. There's no reason for me or anyone, frankly, to do that story again. It's just you're tilling up the same ground. So I wanted to do something different. I wanted to hold true to Stoker's original themes and intentions, but I wanted to package it differently. So I took a deep dive into vampire mythologies, not only from a Western culture, but from all over the world, from the Cherokee Nation to South America, to Egypt, to ancient Greece, to the Islamic countries. And one of the things I started to notice is that our Western culture is one of the very few that has male vampires. In most cultures, vampires are women. Okay. They trace their origins back to the myth of the succubi. That's where vampires come from. So it made a whole lot of sense to me to just kind of go with that and give Dracula more of a global appeal, because vampires don't belong exclusively to Western culture. So when you read Cult of Dracula, Rise of Dracula, and now Reign of Dracula, those are the 3 volumes, what you'll start to see is that we draw different vampire stories into our Dracula legacy here. Like we'll pull the deer woman from Cherokee mythology, La Llorona from South America, the Aswang from the Philippines, Medusa from ancient Greece. All of these women were Dracula at different times in history, interpreted differently by the cultures who observed her. So once I went down that route, it opened up this whole new world of storytelling possibilities, which allowed me to, again, keep true to Stoker's intentions, but give it to you in a way you're not expecting.
That is excellent. Now, did you find any things as far as like the tropes that, of course, Western styled vampire stories have been able to tell, all the quintessential things that we know from how Dracula has always been told here in the States? Is there any commonalities that you've seen outside of that?
So in my story, we do keep the characters. We keep a lot of the setting names, like in Cult of Dracula, for example, Whitby is a sanatorium somewhere in Tennessee. So we keep those things. Of course, you'll meet Jonathan Harker, Abe Van Helsing, Lucy Westerna, Mina Murray. They're all there. Renfield is another character. I love my Renfield in this story. He just really came alive on his own. And as far as the commonalities, of vampires from culture to culture, There's a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. You know, generally it is the major commonality is the weakness in the sunlight. You
Hmm.
know, we don't really acknowledge that a lot in Cult of Dracula because again, it's such a common, as you said, trope. Everybody understands that.
Yeah.
You know, everybody already knows vampires can't come out in the sun. Everybody already knows vampires drink blood. I don't need to tell another story where these people are completely ignorant about vampires and they're like, oh my God, they can't come out in the sun. Come on. We've all read a vampire story. And if you're setting it in modern day, any story in modern day, somebody's watched Twilight. Okay. It happened. So there's no reason to till that ground. And, you know, I'd rather focus on the things that make my vampires different rather than the just kind of standard, you know, pick it up at Walmart style vampire.
Mm. Okay. And in the incorporation of Lilith, actually the the first time I've actually seen Lilith basically be adapted into a comic book was actually in a Blade comic book, which is
Yeah.
pretty
Mm-hmm.
much going to be the villain in the newest upcoming Blade movie
Yes.
that's supposed to arrive. So
Yeah.
I'm very curious as to how that's going to be portrayed.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same?
I do, man. I love the Lilith character. She's fascinated me since I first read about her in a world history class, world mythology class. And she's just a fascinating figure. And the more you delve into her, you know, the Bible says very little about her. There is an apocryphal book called the Book of Lilith that's very interesting. She's mentioned in Judaic mythology a few times, but where you really find out some cool stuff about her is in the Islamic myth.
Mm,
The Islamic myth is way cooler than anything you get in the you know, in the Bible, as far as this story goes anyway.
right, right, right.
You know, in this one, you know, it goes into more depth about who Lilith is. The angels are absolute dicks in this story. I mean, it's pretty wild. So yeah, I'm very excited to see what they might do with Lilith in the Blade film, because you know she is widely regarded as the mother of demons.
Mhm.
In my world, she's the mother of vampires. So there's a lot of interesting ways that you can go with her. And you know, if you see her origin story, which is in Cult of Dracula issue 3, you get. I think she can be a very sympathetic character too, because if you really boil her down to her base principles, all she wanted to be was free.
Mm,
And, you know, she
yeah.
just didn't want to serve. She didn't want to be subservient, second class to Adam. I don't see what's wrong with that. I don't see what makes her evil, except for the fact that it pissed the angels off. And
Right.
in the myth, you know, in the myth, God actually forgives her and sends the angels to go and find her in her cave and say, "Okay, all's forgiven. You can come back." And Lilith's like, "Nah, I'm good. You know, I'm gonna stay here." And then the angels they curse her to she has to consume 1,000 of her children every day to survive. So, you
Mhm.
know, that makes it very easy to tie it into a vampire myth because vampires feed on innocence, vampires feed on life force. So the angelic curse on Lilith, boom, that gives birth to vampires, and everything else becomes a very easy story to tell in that world.
Now, with the incorporation of basically how you just told that, uh, if the curse is actually instilled in the storyline of this book, she does have what the Daughters of Dracula, Lucy and Mina, that she
Mm-hmm.
basically put in this book. And they're not there as companions. They're there to basically halt everything that's happening with the aid of what Jonathan Harker and
Mm-hmm.
Arthur Homewood.
Yes.
Now, how did Lucy and Mina in this storyline, because they're also of the vampire family,
Mm-hmm.
how did they figure themselves to be somebody that like, oh, we want to be with her, but we're not with her?
That's a great, you know what, that's a great question. And they do have a very complicated and layered relationship that starts in Cult of Dracula, moves through Rise, and culminates in Reign of Dracula. You know, in the beginning, what we find out is Lucy and Mina are half sisters.
Mhm.
They were born into this cult that worships an ancient blood goddess, is what we know in the beginning. It turns out that blood goddess is Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mina she believes that she escaped the cult as a child, and Lucy was left behind. But what we find out later is there were other. It wasn't so much her choice as she thought it was. There's a lot of layers and betrayals in there. She ultimately ends up. Lucy and Mina do end up confronting Mother Dracula, and that leads us into Rise of Dracula, where Mina actually becomes Dracula. She steals that life force, that title from Mother Dracula at the end of Cult of Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
And then so Mina and Lucy I really enjoy writing them because I really enjoyed writing a very strong sister story. It was interesting to me to explore that because I'm an only child. I've never had siblings. So to really try to create an interesting and believable dynamic between two sisters who love each other but also vehemently disagree about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
They're as we bring them together really in Cult, and then Rise we spend forcing them apart. And then in Reign of Dracula, they're running a dual parallel story. People will pick up on this. You'll see parallels with Inferno and Paradiso. Lucy is working her way through the 9 circles of hell, while Mina is working her way through the choruses of heaven. And each one of them will confront God from different perspectives. And this is all happening while a literal Armageddon is happening on Earth. And
Right.
again, not just the Judeo-Christian concept of Armageddon, but we pull in Hindu mythology, we pull in Incan mythology, Mayan mythology, Middle Eastern and Asian mythologies. We pull all of these in. I mean, in the opening battle, because it opens, I mean, right in the middle of the shit has hit the fan.
Right.
And
Right.
I mean, you see these giant Nephilim, they're like striding across the buildings, and little soldiers are down there trying to shoot them with their guns, and then you'll see a demon fly through and an angel cut it down, and you'll see like a zombie army sweeping through, and then there's vampire. It's insane. I like to tell people, if Cult of Dracula were a Tobe Hooper Southern Gothic Texas Chainsaw Massacre style
Right.
film, Rise of Dracula would be a John Carpenter near future dystopia, and Reign of Dracula is a full on George Miller Mad Max the world is fucked apocalypse.
Mm. And it's funny because there's these distinctive points of views that are happening too, because there's almost like, I guess if you want to look at it, there's distinctive missions. Lucy's has her own, Mina has her own, and then there's already this ground assault that's happening on Earth. It's almost what Luke and Vader up there in the stars, and the Battle of Endor is happening.
There you go. Actually, that's a great way to look at it. Jonathan Harker and Arthur Holmwood, they've really grown from Cult of Dracula. Jonathan was just a boring milk toast everyman. Arthur was a very conflicted but selfish person, and they start to lead the resistance in Rise of Dracula, and by Reign of Dracula, they're basically humanity's last stand. Them and the refugees, the people the ragtag rebels they've been able to pull together. That's basically it for humanity. I mean, it's a dark and bleak story, and if you're expecting a happy ending, you're reading the wrong book.
Right. Now outside of this, like even though Mina and Lucy's ultimate, I guess, goal is the destruction of Lilith, who's to say that one of them won't have a lust for power and want to take over in any sort of time frame?
Exactly. There's a lot of different directions that this story could go, and I've been laying the breadcrumbs. If you paid attention from the beginning, and it's, if you don't get it, it's okay. Don't worry, because it's very well hidden in there. But you actually you see the ending coming, because I planted the seeds for it all the way back in Cult of Dracula. So the world I wanted to create is not simple black and white.
Right.
It's layered. It's all colors of the spectrum. There's Renfield in Cult of Dracula has this line about where you are when you see something is just as important as what you see. It all comes down to perspective and point of view.
Mhm.
And so that's a theme that we hammer over and over and over again. I don't answer a lot of questions about morality, good and evil for the reader. I leave that up to you. If you're reading it, you're a
Mhm.
big boy, you're a big girl. You can interpret the story the way you want. You can decide who's right, who's wrong, or maybe they're both wrong. Maybe they're both a little bit right. You get to make those decisions. I don't make them for you. I tell you this story that allows you to kind of go whichever way you feel. There's a great speech in Rise of Dracula, and I got so much hate mail, well, messages, DMs, about it from both people on the left and the right of the political spectrum, because there's a way to read the speech that Lucy gives when she assumes power.
Mhm.
You can read it as an absolute communist manifesto, or you can read it as hardcore MAGA slamming down the gauntlet on the podium. And both of those interpretations are correct, and both of those interpretations are wrong. Perspective, point of view, what do you take from it?
Right.
And in Reign of Dracula, the story is going to be that same way. While Lucy is working her way through the 9 circles of hell, that doesn't necessarily mean that she's evil, and it doesn't necessarily mean that she's good either.
Right.
It's just, how are you going to interpret it? And it's been a very interesting story to tell. I've honestly enjoyed writing Lucy's journey a little bit more than Mina's, but I know Mina's journey is going to have a bigger payoff in the end. So I'll probably end up digging her more when we get there.
Definitely. Now, as of recently, you actually came out with a revamped version of the campaign.
Yes.
And I mean, you actually have had an opportunity to actually push this out in a certain manner that not only have you taken this opportunity to jump into a lot of digital artwork,
Mhm.
but judging by the artwork that's behind you, you have a fascination with a lot of painted covers.
Mhm.
You added what is it, ink wash finish,
Mhm.
and the fact that you've been able to do things digitally. The interior paint on the inside of the covers are all black. It's all black and white.
Yes, that's what's really cool, because Reign of Dracula will come out in comic book stores beginning in the spring of 2024. So
Okay.
you'll be able to get it. You'll be able to get the 24-page full color issues in your local comic book shop. No problem. My books are distributed through Diamond and Simon and Schuster, so they'll be out there.
Yeah.
But so when Jerry Carita from Thorny Comics, when he convinced me to do the Kickstarter, I told him, okay, two things. There's got to be a reason, and we've got to make it affordable and accessible for people. So the reason to go and support the Kickstarter rather than waiting for it to come out in the comic book store, although I do want you to go buy it in the comic book store, please. That way I can keep doing these things.
Right. Right.
So what we're doing is we're giving you something that you cannot get anywhere else, and you're going to get it sooner than anybody else. So what we're doing with our Kickstarter, these editions are actually 48-page jumbo sized issues. So remember, the ones that come out in comic shops are 24 pages.
24s. Yep.
Yes. So you're getting 2 issues, the equivalent of 2 issues, plus bonus content in each one of these. So we're going to do a Kickstarter for 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6. So
Right.
you'll be able to get those. And the interiors are going to be black and white ink wash in the Kickstarter exclusive versions. Those versions of these books they will be the exact number that we sell will be printed. There will never be any more. Those will be never be reproduced in any format after that. The only way you'll be able to get these is through the Kickstarter. And some of these covers, I mean, if we're looking at it, some of them there may be 10 or fewer printed. And that's it. So these are going to be incredibly rare and collectible books. And you get a lot of bonus material. So there's a reason to go and back the Kickstarter other than just, hey, give me money. You know, I wanted to make sure that my backers really got something special, something unique, by choosing to support me in this endeavor.
Definitely. Now, I've had the opportunity to interview Jerry Carita for Cicada Samurai. Now,
Yes.
basically, with his newest imprint with Thorny Comics, and with
Mhm.
it being a new imprint, what was
Mhm.
basically your reasoning in joining forces with him in order to put out Reign of Dracula?
You know, I'm probably going to spill a little bit of tea here. I apologize. It was kind of a necessity, to be honest. I was at San Diego Comic-Con, and initially, Reign of Dracula was going to be coming out through Red 5 Comics. Red 5 has gone through some restructuring and reorganization over there. Scott Chitwood's really, he's taken the lead, and Scott's an amazing human being, really is. He's worked so hard on my book. I have a book out from them called Prometheus in Chains.
Okay.
It's in comic book stores now. And Scott he told me, you know, like, hey, I'll honor everything in your contract. We will do Reign of Dracula, but I could see it in his eyes that it was going to be difficult for him because he's taking over this company, and he's trying to hold everything together and still keep things going.
Right.
So rather than putting a lot of pressure on Scott that he didn't deserve, because again, he's a fine human being. I can't speak highly enough of Scott Chitwood at Red 5.
Right.
So I decided to take Reign of Dracula off of his plate. Because another thing about Scott's really not, his wheelhouse isn't mature comics. Scott loves to make comics for young readers,
Hmm.
and that's just not what I write.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
uh, Jerry and I had a relationship through the Netflix television show Swap Shop. Jerry was the producer. I was on screen talent. I was the comic book buyer in the show. And Jerry and Tom Mum and I, we became very good friends. We kept in contact. You know, hell, Jerry and I took a road trip up to Pennsylvania to see my friend Tony Todd perform in a stage play there. So, you know, Jerry and I have become really good friends. And so when he was launching Thorny Comics, you know, it just made a lot of sense. The universe, the stars lined up, and Jerry had a new imprint. I had a new comic. He needed content. I needed a home. We love working together, and you know, honestly, this is where I should have been all along. Because I know with Jerry and with Thorny Comics, I'm not just a paragraph in previews. I'm not just a line item. You know, he really cares about the project. He really cares about its success. And that's not to say that, you know, people that at Red 5 and Source Point Press, not that they didn't care,
Right.
but, you know, they had a lot of other things to care about.
Hmm.
So I was one at Source Point. I was one of many books. At Red 5, I was one of many books. Here at Thorny Comics, I'm the book. I get my, you know, we get the sunshine on this title, on this project, and everybody there is, you know, is behind it. And just like, you know, when the next book comes out, I'll be joining them. I'll be right behind them, supporting them. So it's you know, it's a very supportive place to be, and I'm very excited to see where they're able to go with their partnerships with Blue Juice Comics, and then
Yeah.
you know, things like that. So there's a bright future for Thorny Comics, and I am very happy to be a part of it.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Now, adaptation.
Mhm.
Um, as far as development, Cult of Dracula,
Mhm.
and a very pivotal voice in horror.
Mhm.
And pretty much you brought him up briefly, Tony
Yeah.
Todd.
Yeah.
How did this introduction happen?
So I met Tony back in 2013,
Mm, okay.
back when Cult of Dracula was a stage play. My background, for those of you who don't know, my background is in the world of film and theater. I've been a playwright, I've been a screenwriter. That's my wheelhouse. So I originally wrote Cult of Dracula as a stage play. It was performed at the Browncoat Pub and Theater in Wilmington, North Carolina. It
Hmm.
ran for an entire month of sold out shows. It was nominated for several North Carolina Theater Awards. It won a few of them. And as again, the stars lined up, as fate would have it, Tony Todd happened to be in town filming something. Wilmington has Screen Gem Studios. You know, it's well known for Dawson's Creek, One Tree Hill. They filmed the most recent Scream movies, the most recent Halloween movies there. So it's a big studio.
Okay.
Tony was in town. Tony was in town filming something. I forget what. And he had a night off and decided he wanted to go to the theater. And he came and he stumbled into my theater and he watched my show and he hung around afterward. And you know, he was very, very encouraging. Something about the play, something about the story really resonated with him.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's kept saying, Rich, you know, you got to do something with this. This can't be it. You know, you got to do. You've got something here. So my original intention was to adapt that stage play to a screenplay, and I was going to produce a low budget independent film. You know, I had the connections in the film industry. I had people that would work crew. Tony was graciously offering to be a part of it, to play Agent Brom. And so I began working on that. Unfortunately, my wife Amber became very ill with chronic kidney disease, and she passed away in 2020.
Oh, sorry. Did it.
Thank you. But so when she got sick, I knew I couldn't make a film. You know, I couldn't devote the time, the resources necessary, because making even a low budget film is very, very expensive and very, very time consuming. So I gave up. I actually deleted the entire project so that I wouldn't be tempted to go back to it. And Amber got so pissed at me. I don't think she had ever in my life yelled at me as much as she did that night. And luckily, she had a PDF of the script that I had sent to her, and she made me go back to it. She said, "You know, I get it. I know that we can't do the film right now. Okay," she said, "I understand, but you can't give up on it." And she said, "Well, you know, why don't you look at turning it into a comic book?" And it was like a light went off in my head, and I was like, you know, writing a comic book script isn't dissimilar from writing a screenplay. In fact, a comic book script has more in common with a screenplay than it does with writing a prose novel.
It does.
Very, very similar. And you know, writing prose and writing scripts requires a completely different skill set.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, my background was in writing scripts, not writing novels. So it was a fairly, I'm not going to say it was an easy transition, but it was easier than it would have been to try to turn it into a novel. I'd made contacts in the comic book industry over the years. Georges Genti, from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He's working on Mandalorian right now. Fantastic guy. He helped me. The late Tom Lyle, veteran of both Spider-Man and Batman. Those people, they were willing to give me a lot of advice and help me. So we turned it into a comic book. It became a top 50 best-selling comic book of 2021, and it was optioned immediately. When it hit shelves, it was optioned to be developed into a feature film. It took a long time because COVID hit right in the middle of all that. So eventually the company that optioned it sold that option to another company called BR Films, and BR Films put it into immediate active development. And then the writers and actors strike happened. So the brakes got pumped on that again.
Mm-hmm.
Now that the strikes are resolved, it is it's everything's moving again, which is awesome. And there's a very very large company that has an animal as a logo, that's taking a very strong look at Cult of Dracula right now. So
A mythical animal or an animal?
An animal is
Okay,
their
gotcha.
that's their yeah, that's their kind of mascot, I guess.
Right. Now, if you took yourself back to when, you know, maybe you were just starting to put this together and just putting Cult of Dracula together, is there anything you would have done differently?
Wow. You know, that's a really good question. I'm not a person who generally looks backward at, you know, coulda, woulda, shoulda, you know, because I don't think we'll ever move forward as long as we're looking back over our shoulders. Maybe, you know, maybe I would have spent a little more time fundraising in the beginning. if Source Point Press knew this, and they're going to know it after they hear this. But when I went to them, when I took them Cult of Dracula #1, Cult of Dracula #1 is all I had done. I had not written the script for issue 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. I had a very loose outline for it. My artist had not started on anything because he didn't have a script. So
Right.
maybe if I went back on that, maybe I would have had more more finished before I took it to the publishers. But I'm a guy, shoot your shot,
Yeah.
take your swing, and if you
Hey,
see opportunity coming, seize it. Worry about how you're going to make it work later. Go for it. And so I did. I saw my shot. I took it. I hit it, and then I had to scramble to get everything together after that. So if I could do it all over again, I'd have more ready to go, because that would have saved me a lot of headaches and a lot of acid reflux and sleepless nights.
well, now that the heartburn is settled, I'll say that it's worked out well so far.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm happy with where we are.
Excellent. That now, I appreciate you doing this with me. Right now, you got about 2 weeks left in the Kickstarter campaign,
Yeah.
and outside of this, when the bulk of Reign of Dracula starts to hit everybody's mailboxes and everything like that, and then convention season starts back up, is there going to be the inclusive factor of possibly conjoining all 3 books into one omnibus?
Yes, that's something that we've discussed. It's going to be a little complicated, being as the book was released across multiple publishers. But Source Point Press, who put out Cult and Rise of Dracula, they've been very accommodating and willing to work with us. In fact, in the Kickstarter, there's actually a catch-up tier. There's a digital catch-up and a physical catch-up, so you can get Cult and Rise of Dracula by backing this Kickstarter. Source Point Press was very kind to work with us to be able to do that. So if you want to read digitally, you can. If you want to read them in physical, we can do that. And then the ultimate goal in the end is to collect it into a large, either an omnibus or a slipcover box set, because I just want to see that on my shelf. So I'm hoping that we can put it on other people's as well.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Yes. So Rich, this was a great interview, and I wish you the best. Once again, 2 weeks left in the campaign. It seems like a real good thing happening, and I wish you the best.
I appreciate it, man. And I thank you again for having me. I started my career by going on every podcast I could get that would have me. And podcasters like yourself, they got me here. So I'm very happy to be able to come back and do it again, so you can get me to my next destination. I love what you guys do. I love your show. So I'm humbled and honored to be here.
Happy to do it, man. Thank you. So for James Grandmaster Facts Boys, Rich Davis, Reign of Dracula, thank you guys for joining us again, and we are out.